Now, the whole we are at a juncture where it is not just a question of Palestine, but it's a question of the whole global order. What the Palestine resistance did on 7th October 2023 was, of course, a rising for independence. I'm sorry, I can hear voices somewhere. So, what the Palestine resistance did on 7th October 2023, it was a rising not just against Israel. Of course, the element of freedom for Palestine, free Palestine, was the predominant one. But it was also a rising against the global order imposed on the world by America after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there are two phases. After the Second World War, there was a phase of global, politics where you had two blocks: the Soviet bloc and the American bloc, American-led bloc, and then you had the Third World. So that was a phase where we saw resistance in Vietnam, in Cuba, in Nicaragua. There were these major revolutions. Vietnam was the main point which resisted American neo-imperialism. And now, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, we had this new world order imposed on the world, which was again American neo-imperialism in a fresh form, where there was a talk of rules-based order, where there was basically a kind of a consensus because Soviet Union was not there, so there was a consensus that America is the leader of the world now, undisputed leader, and these were the time 1980s when the Oslo Accords came into being, and Palestinians were given a bit of land to self-govern, but in a very limited way, because in West Bank and Gaza, they got some areas to govern, but strictly under Israeli supervision. I will not go into details of that because I think students can uh, look up and look up for the details on the net. But the point here is that the whole the whole era was marked by, the late 80s saw the first intifada, the late 90s saw the second intifada, which went on till 2004. But after the second intifada, more or less it was deemed that somehow the Palestinian question will remain as it is, Israel will continue to dominate, and we had the Accords in the Trump era, where basically there was going to be a normalization with the Arab states who had refused to establish ties or recognize Israel till there was a Palestinian state, and that was the danger, that the whole that there will be no resistance at all to the American-led American NATO and Israel, this whole combined bloc which was dominating the world. There will be no resistance. And then 7th October happened. And 7th October, it was a glorious chapter, not just I would compare it to the Tet offensive of the Vietnamese forces in 1968. You see, Vietnam won the war in 1975, but the Tet offensive signaled that Vietnamese could fight back, and they will not be silenced. They reached up till Saigon. Technically, the Tet offensive was a defeat, but it was a strategic victory because Vietnam struck a strategic blow. In a similar manner, 7th October 2023 struck a strategic blow to Israel. Israel cannot recover from it. This is because, you see, historically, if you see these kind of strategic blows, which shattered the illusion, like Tet offensive shattered the illusion of American power. And so 7th October 2023 shattered the illusion of Israeli power, which was backed by America. Because Israel is the policeman or the police inspector or whatever, DGP of America in the Middle East and beyond. And Israel was held up as a model. Even in India, the right-wing forces, they still hold Israel as a model, even though the Indian state, under a right-wing government, is supporting the two-state solution. Even then, and we can see on social media, because I've been at the receiving end of that. My YouTube channels were banned, my Twitter, my X handles were suspended, and yet I fought on. So the point here is that we have to understand that the biggest contribution of this whole Palestinian resistance or this whole movement is it has rekindled hope against American Israeli, this whole homogeneity which they wanted to impose on the world, the whole globalization agenda which they want to impose. And it is not just the Palestinians, it is about the axis of resistance. The axis of resistance includes Yemen, it includes Hezbollah, it includes Lebanon, it includes Iraq, and it includes Iran. And behind Iran, we have Russia, we have China, we have North Korea. We also have the Ukrainian war. And the Ukrainian war also is an American war imposed by Russia, which seeks to impose this one-sided agenda of American imperialism, which is which is today known as a rules-based order. And Putin has rightfully made fun of that rules-based order on many occasions. But the point is that the people were not rising. I mean, you see, these were countries, Iran, and so basically when they opposed America, then it was basically at the level of ideology, at the level of economy. Like China has been like consistently waging a battle on the economic front, but at the level of mass resistance, this the Palestinians did. The small nation, and they struck at the heart of Israeli American imperialism. And the beauty of the whole thing is, despite suffering, uh, the suffering that the Gazans went through, it's there for everyone to see and evaluate, because everyone talks about it, and rightfully so. I will not dwell on the suffering aspect because it is there. I will dwell on the resistance to that suffering, and that resistance in a 15-month period, they brought Israel to their knees. This is the reality. Because if you read the Hebrew websites, if you read the Israeli websites, what are they saying? They are saying that this current ceasefire and the scenes of South of people of Gaza trapped in South returning to the tune of 5 lakh and above people to the north. And what was the north? North was the Netzarim axis. It was designated by Israel as a resistance-free zone where they were trying to establish, they were trying to grab 18 kilometers of the Gaza Strip out of the total 45 kilometers. And they were saying, and they also built a road east to west, which is called the Netzarim Road. And they were trying to establish a model that we will clear this place of Hamas. And in the process, they were also ethnically cleansing the place, because there were also massive killing. I mean, there was a separate, जिसको हम हिंदी में कहते हैं, एक अलग से नरसंहार नॉर्थ गाजा में हुआ. There was a separate genocide in North Gaza over the past like 2.5 months. And the whole idea was to basically clear the land of the resistance of Palestinians and of establishing Israel's military rule. And this was and it was supposed to show the world that, look, Israel has done this. It might not have eliminated Hamas all over Gaza, but North Gaza, see, we have eliminated Hamas. We have reduced the number of Palestinian civilians also. There were also talks of establishing settlements in Gaza, in North Gaza, and there were visits by various right-wing extremists, Israeli extremists, to establish settlements. All that vanished because in 1.5 months, Israel had no idea that Hamas is going to come back in this manner. Anthony Blinken is on record, and he said that Hamas was able to rebuild its capacity, what it had lost in North Gaza, which means that more than 10 to 15,000 fighters it was able to raise in this 2.5 month period. And these were young boys who fought with such discipline. I've never seen. I'm a military historian. I've written on the history of 1857, a 2-volume A War of Civilizations. In the military history of the world, we have not seen a resistance of this type. This even surpasses Vietnam. The other big thing which Hamas did was the taking the world out of Islamophobia, because post-Soviet Union world, the ideology of the post-Soviet Union American Israel led world order was Islamophobia, because the Muslims were seen as the enemy. And this ideology was exported even to India and to many other countries. But within once and to back that, America also created many terrorist organizations, and it is on record, including ISIS, to basically project Islam as a religion of barbarism. But on 7th October and after 7th October, we saw those videos of Hamas fighters fighting with their bare hands, putting bombs on tanks with their bare hands. At the same time, they had sophisticated technology also adapted to the local condition. They had these extensive tunnels, which was which was a maze, and which Israel was unable to crack, is unable to crack to this day. So we saw this combination of a Vietnam, a Vietnam type rugged resistance of elementary forces combined with technology. And this was the unique contribution of Yahya Sinwar. He was the one who, and Qasim Soleimani and many leaders which the West portrays as terrorists, but we Indians of the 1857 line, we see them as freedom fighters. So the point here is that this battle of perception, there was no challenge to the discourse that Muslims are this, and even so many liberal Muslims and liberals in general, they had they had started telling Muslims that this is something. Why don't you come out in front of Al Qaeda? Why don't you come out against ISIS? Although there were many occasions where even Indian organizations like Jamiat Ulama Hind and others, they organized big rallies condemning this form of what the Takfiris and the ISIS and the Al Qaeda were actually American creations. In Syria, they tried to topple Assad, and at that point, Iran and Russia intervened, and their plan failed. In this during this phase, during this phase, they were able to topple Assad. Even then, even then, if you see in all other fronts, the whole, that is the only setback which the actors of resistance faced. But in all other fronts, including the Iran-Israel exchange of fire, including the Hezbollah, and the ceasefire achieved in Lebanon, the political victory of Hezbollah when Israel refused to withdraw after the 60-day period, and now Lebanon, which has where Shiites are in a minority and Christians and Sunnis are there, they now the Lebanese army is now coming around to Hezbollah's point of view. So all these things are major developments which the entire global politics is affected by it. And I totally endorse the idea that India should build some kind of a movement, because we are a country, we have traditionally supported Palestine, we have supported the Palestine resistance. There was a time when Palestinians used to come and study here. I remember that time. So the point here is that we Indians have to build some kind of a mass movement which helps in any way, which helps in against the Israelis who must be. I mean, many soldiers come here and they rest in various vacations, Manali and Goa and other places. And if we can do something about that to begin with, at the same time, we have to start this whole process of calling leaders from West Asia to India for conferences, despite the expected opposition which we will face from the right-wing government. Because there was a tradition of holding seminars on Palestine, and that tradition vanished after the 90s. So this is a major task which an organization like Institute of Objective Studies can take up, and we can then go forward from here, and we can talk about other aspects, and we can actually deepen the understanding. We can tell at least the educated Indians about what is going on there. It is not a one-sided picture of Israel winning. Israel is not winning. You just read the Hebrew. I'll again come to that. You just read what the Israeli press is writing. This ceasefire, the return of Gazans to their dwellings in the north, is seen as a major defeat. The Israelis are saying, and there's one more thing, the return of Hamas in Gaza. Because Netanyahu failed in his military objectives, which were number one, eliminate Hamas, number two, freeing hostages, and number three, which was establishing some kind of a post-war scenario where there was a non-Hamas government in Gaza. All these three failed. So the third part, where if you, I mean, the ceasefire was announced on 15 January. The exchange of prisoners began on 19th January. It has come to this stage. Now, in less than 10 days, we see that the whole civilian infrastructure, which was destroyed by uh, the civilian infrastructure of Gaza, which was destroyed by Israel. Basically, it was destroyed, it was dismantled. 1,400 police personnel, because Hamas was governing Gaza before 7th October, and till Israel invaded, and their civil administration was supposed to be smashed. But in 10 days, the entire police structure is on its feet. The municipal structure is on its feet. The health workers, killed in thousands, are on their feet. And Hamas is arranging for tents, it is arranging for food, it is arranging for all sorts of uh, the hospitals were destroyed, and yet they're setting up these emergency tents, medical tents. And there's some Arab countries which are helping, although I must say that the help or the aid is not to that extent which is required. But the point here is that why were we fooled like this? Why did the media and we allowed ourselves to be fooled like this? That Israel is winning, it has lost. Hamas is intact. It's not just intact; it has come back to power. In West Bank, if you see, currently about 29 lakh Palestinians are being surrounded by more than 40,000 Israeli troops. The Palestinian Authority also is coordinating with Israeli troops, and Israeli troops are, for the last 1 week or 10 days, they have not been able to make a breakthrough in either Jenin or Tulkarem or Hebron, or the resistance there is so intense that it is going to be another Gaza in West Bank, where Israel will lose. And Israeli leaders have already started saying this. In Lebanon, the deadline which Israel has got till 18th February in itself shows its defeat, because the people there moved in their homes in front of Israeli tanks. You had pictures of hijab-clad women standing in front of, uh, uh, standing in front of Israeli tanks, and that kind of a resistance of common people came to the fore. So this is a unique moment in history which we are living, where armed struggle of the people is marching hand in hand with more popular forms of resistance and more mass-oriented forms of resistance. Thank you.